Hello and welcome to the very first episode of D365 Insights podcast, brought to you by Source and Connect. I'm Sarah Moody, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we kick off this exciting journey into the world of Microsoft Dynamics 365. Whether you're an experienced professional or someone curious about D365, this is the place for you. And today's topic is the journey of becoming a D365 Functional Solutions Architect. We'll dive into the career paths, challenges, and the skills required to thrive in this role. Our guest today is Kofi Folson, a seasoned D365 Functional Solutions Architect with extensive experience in the field. Kofi and I worked together on a complex F&O project a few years ago and have always kept in touch. Also joining us is Sarang Kusare, D365 Lead Functional Consultant, who has worked together with Kofi and is going to share some of his expertise. So welcome both of you onto the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you both briefly introduce yourself and share a bit of background about yourselves, starting with Kofi?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be part of this conversation. My name is Kofi Folson, and I am a D365 Business Solutions Functional Consultant. What that means is that I sit across finance and operations and customer engagement, proposing dynamic solutions for customers going through their technology transformations. And my background is IT. I came from a computing background and then progressed through joining a partner within the D365 field. And in the last years of my career, I've progressed through and risen through to a solutions architect. So that's just a little bit about me.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Sarang Kusare, and thanks Sarah for inviting us to this very first podcast. So a bit of a background about me. I have been in the Dynamics 365, Microsoft Dynamics 365 space for last around 15, 16 years. And my educational background is I'm an engineer plus an MBA in marketing, but the entire my journey into D365 space has been more so into project management and accounting side of things, and also now lately into project operations. And to just brief about the association with Kofi, we have worked together mostly around now for 12 years kind of space together on multiple different global implementations. So yeah, that's about me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So let's go into defining the role a bit then. So in your words, what exactly does a D365 Functional Solutions Architect do?
So I think it's in the name actually. You've got the functional piece and you've got a solutions architect. I think there are different ways that people look at a solutions architect because a solution architect can be defined in multiple ways, whether a technical architect or an integration architect or a data architect or a functional architect. I think when we come into the D365 world and we say a functional architect, we're very much talking about somebody with a lot of business experience and also experience on the platform, being Microsoft Dynamics, being the platform. A solutions architect, I would say, is somebody who understands the strategy of a business from a very large perspective and then translates that strategy into a solution, but in the D365 sense, using Microsoft Dynamics as a platform to enable us to achieve that. An architect is somebody who would create a vision and would support the people around them to build that vision, to make that vision tangible. And in the quest of doing that, would essentially bring people along to sell that vision, make them understand it so that they can essentially work together as a team. And in working together as a team, they're able to go to their customers, they're able to sell that vision. So a solution architect is very much like another construction architect, although we're dealing with technology. And in D365 functional sense, we're talking about the person who has a lot of business experience, who is able to kind of understand that customer's journey and bring across all the business solution capability of Microsoft Dynamics to propose a solution or a vision to achieve the business's strategy, sell it, build it, and then essentially be able to operate it. So to me, that's the role of a functional solutions architect. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And so, what are the core responsibilities of the role?
I think the role is a very large role, and it depends on the full spectrum of the journey of a transformation, right? So at the beginning of a transformation, the solutions architect role is largely to understand the vision of the organization that is wanting to go on this journey of the transformation. And throughout that journey, what the solutions architect is essentially doing is supporting the leadership, the stakeholders, to understand this technology platform and how this platform is going to support this vision. And so that to me is around the initialization phase where the partner or the technology partner is coming to the picture, and you've got a solution architect in front of a customer, and that solution architect is supporting the customer to understand that journey and what it's going to look like. He then comes into this role once the customer is understood a little, not everything, not the depth. Then the solutions architect's role is to essentially work with the customer's organization to essentially map out what we call a design, right? So a design is looking at the capability of the Microsoft Dynamics business application, looking at what the business want to achieve, and then coming out with a picture or a vision of where everything fits. Then going on to the stakeholders, whether be it the IT community, the business community, to essentially get them to understand that vision. So that very much is around the initial stages when the solutions architect's role started. And then once that's been understood, the solutions architect's role is to give an oversight of actually putting that vision into a tangible asset. And what I mean by that is essentially building that solution. So this is where the solution architect will lead a team of consultants to essentially gather requirements in a number of areas of the solution. The solution very much is not just what happens in D365, but essentially it is what happens to the customer's legacy estate in relation to the transformation journey. So the solution architect works with a group of consultants to say, we want to put this thing in, but let's also make sure that this thing or design that we're putting in is able to support the customer's technology capability. The customer is able to operate it. The customer is able to support it. And essentially, the solutions architect oversee this build process, lead the customer to onboard or migrate onto their new application. And within that process, ensures that the integrity of the design is guarded, making sure that people, the stakeholders have understood it, and the design is protected, and then effectively support the customer in transition that to another group of individuals who are able to also understand the solution, and then support the users who would use the solution. So to me, that is the journey of a solutions architect. It sounds quite simple, but this process can take you quite a bit into. So that's what I would say from this. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And you mentioned the different types of architects. How does a functional architect differ from a technical architect in the D365 ecosystem?
That's a great question, Sarah. So a technical architect basically oversees the technology considerations of the solution. They are meant to have a very deep depth around the type of languages that we're going to use, the technology consideration, what kind of platform that the solution is going to sit on. The technical architect needs to understand the legacy technology capability as well, and have all the decisions and the considerations that allow D365 and make choices around the approach for integration, around what kind of language we're going to use for the integration, decisions around how fast, how slow that integration is meant to be, make considerations about peaks and troughs around the business process. When it comes to month end, what happens? All of these considerations essentially falls within the technical architect's domain. So they are broad, their domain is very broad, but largely on the technical solution, making sure that what we are putting in the business solution works. The functional role or the solutions architect is largely around wanting to achieve the business remit of the design, right? So every business will have a way of going out to attract customers, wanting customers to put in an order, processing that order, and essentially wanting to report how good or bad the business has done over a particular period. So this process, which may touch a number of different business processes, is what the functional solutions architect role is to look at the pieces of, I will call them modules or the smaller capabilities within the larger D365 capability and say, right, this is what your business does. This is what you want to achieve. This piece here is going to give you that. And the functional architect is meant to have, it might not necessarily be a very deep understanding of every module, but needs to have a broad understanding of how everything fits together, right? And when they've got that, they can lead the business. And I think that lastly, that the functional architect also need to be able to articulate that solution to the business stakeholders in the language they understand. And I think, as we go through that, we will talk about that language that the business do understand.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And Sarang, in your experience as a lead functional consultant, what are the key skills that you want to see from the solution architect on the project?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, Sarah. I was about to make my points only on this one. Because having worked with many solution architects, I think I have had, I have come down to, I think, almost 10, 11 points, which I feel every solution architect should have. And the most important point that a solution architect should have, other than business knowledge and other than everything else, is facing uncertainty. Because you need to have a calm, composed attitude towards every point that is coming to you. And then you have to provide a proper resolution to not only the functional consultants, but you are dealing with business stakeholders, you are dealing with testers, you are dealing with training people. This is like the overarching attitude that you should possess. But then other than that, as Kofi initially mentioned about business knowledge, that is prime important. And the best thing about that is, how do you increase a business knowledge? You just basically read not only from the a project that you are currently dealing on, but you have to constantly read about different industries, so that whenever you are placed in a project, like suppose if you are placed in a project which is dealing with construction, you should basically know what that company does. That is one thing a solution architect should have in him. Second is the financial knowledge. I mean, people generally overlook saying that, even if I don't know financial knowledge, I have a financial consultant with me. But that's not how it works. You should know the debits and credits. You should know accounting, because ultimately that finance lead consultant is going to come to you only to discuss about the nitty-gritties. It generally said that the devil is in the detail, but I generally say that God is in the detail. And that's what it is. I mean, a solution architect must be able to understand what different areas of the solution and the lead consultants are trying to talk to him. This is one. And the second is communication, as Kofi just mentioned. I mean, you should be able to articulate that correctly to the business stakeholders, and they should buy in your concept. They should not get confused. And in saying that, communication comes in various format. It's not just talking. It's about whiteboarding. It's about having proper presentation skills. It's about listening. And I think listening comes at the top, because it's their solution, not my solution. It's not I have to show how much I know. It's I have to listen to what their problem is. So you can build a solution, you can build a very fancy solution, which you can say that, hey, this is I have made. But if that is not used by the end customer who is going to use it, then your solution is not good. So I think these are some of the points that a solution architect should possess, and it has many facets to it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, some of the softer skills as well, when we're not just talking about the sort of technical side of things.
Yes.
That's great. Are there any common misconceptions about this role that you would like to clear up?
Kofi, shall I? I mean, because you are the solution architect, I have worked with many under. So shall I? So the common misconception is, I mean, people generally feel that it's a progression. I mean, generally people starts with, generally I have started from testing. once you go into testing area, you get to know the product very well. You get to understand the process slowly. Then you go into functional consultant, then lead consultant, and then ultimately solution architect. Now, the initial three progressions can happen, based on the individual and his hunger for growth and knowledge. He can easily go there. But after lead consultant to solution architect, I think that's a major leap, and that's where most of the people, I think, feel that, I have come this far, maybe I will fake it and I'll then make it there. That's not how it works. I mean, you can easily work with a solution architect for the first week, and you can easily gauge what his capability is. And if the person is not honest, I mean, humility and honesty is also one of the trait I'm trying to say, that if the solution architect doesn't know anything, he should admit it, that I don't know, and can you please explain me. I think not many solution architects that I've worked with do this. And I think the ones where I have done successful projects, they have been doing this, and they were more honest and, humble. Kofi.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I 100% agree with you. And in addition to what you have said, I think, sometimes people do expect the solutions architect to know everything. The solutions architect may not necessarily know everything, because it depends on the particular industry that the solution architect is leading in. What the solution architect should really be good at in terms of the skills that we need, I think, in addition to communication, one of the biggest things that the solution architect also needs to be able to do is to direct and manage the build of the solution. Correct. Right? So a solutions architect may not necessarily know every single thing about bombs, routes when it comes to production, but he's got enough experience to know about the broader solution. He knows about security, he knows about integrations, he knows about migration, he knows about the finance element, he knows about project. But here he comes with somebody who's worked in the production industry for 20 years, who's onboarded to be a consultant. So the solutions architect may not necessarily have 20 years of experience in working in a production environment, but he has a greater picture about the process of actually getting through a build, right? Correct. He understands how to control the scope. He understands how to move on from, you may not necessarily take every single thing that you've got on your requirements off, but then the solution architect understands what are the gains and what are the wins, right? And the losses. Sometimes you got to make difficult choices. You got to defer certain things to the next phase and understand amongst the customer's requirements which elements are key and why, and what does the customer want. And so the solutions architect doesn't need to know it all. They need to be really experienced, have seen, I would say they should have experienced a number of implementations, right?
Yes.
Whether they be in the role or they were not necessarily a solutions architect, you learn a lot whilst you're in implementation. Whether you're a functional lead, a functional consultant, you do learn a lot and you see other architects work. So that experience in itself, when you're in the role, you look at that and you draw from that. You draw to say, I'm going to make this decision because I've seen it done before. But it doesn't necessarily mean you need all that experience. You need to know every detail about every module. No, the solution architect doesn't need to know that. And I think that's a great misconception. You can have someone, basically giving a solution architect a little bit of a bad rap just because they didn't know one small little detail. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair. Yeah.
I feel, that's what I have been talking to a couple of my solution architect friends as well in the industry. And generally what it is that you should have depth in at least one module of the ERP, and then you can have a width of knowledge, which might not be that deep in other areas, but at least you should have an overview of something, but you should be deep at least in one module. That is expected. And then you can extrapolate based on the experience, as you mentioned. And just one last point on that, I was also touching on product knowledge as well. I mean, there is again one more misconception about, product knowledge will come and you get, when you go on to the project. But I personally feel that you have to make that effort to learn your product. If you don't know your product, if the solution architect or if for example, a lead consultant doesn't know his product well, there will be limitations when you discuss the concept with the client. I mean, you can hear many different new things from the client, and if you don't know whether it is possible in the product or not, you have to be honest enough to tell him that I'll come do that, research that and come back. But my personal take on product knowledge is you got to invest time and effort learning the product.
All right. And I think, Sarang, you probably would agree with me as well that in addition to, knowing one module, I mean, there are elements that we would say are foundational, right? So
Yes.
in both applications setting across, you got to know the foundational elements. So, if you're like a finance and operations solutions architect, you're a functional solutions architect. So the foundations a lot of the time revolves around finance,
Finance.
the
Yes.
the the legal entities that you're going to build, considerations around master data. You got to understand how records are shared.
Correct.
You got to have understanding of how do you implement a solution across legal boundaries, across, geographical boundaries. You got to understand the considerations around that. You got to have, as a functional solutions architect, you are not necessarily a technical architect, but you have to have great technical understanding
Yes.
to be able to sell the vision to a technical architect, right? So, you still need to have all these skills. Personally, I know a lot about, if you like, environments. I know a lot about Azure. I know a lot about, technical elements. I may not be a developer, but I do understand X++. I can have a conversation about a technical architect and say, what is the environment? Have a conversation with a developer and say, I know about this method that I've used in the past. Can you not draw a little bit on that method? So it's a very large role. And the
Yes.
reason why you kind of need that experience is because you're dabbling in so many things and it just takes time to build this knowledge in industry, finance, technology, right? Development, etc., process, deployment. It is just a very large kettle of fish. And so it's kind of very difficult. It takes years to
Years of
actually get
experience.
to that level. Yeah.
Correct.
That's great, Kofi. Thank you, and Sarang. So we've touched on your sort of personal journeys a little bit at the beginning, but can you just take us through how did you begin your journey in the world of Dynamics 365 individually?
Yeah, my one was quite interesting actually. Everybody, starts from somewhere. It said that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a step,
Single
right?
step.
Yeah. So, my personal one actually, mine started from uni. So I did an MSc program, and before I went in, the particular program had to do with enterprise applications, and it was aligned to Microsoft. So straight from there, I knew that I was actually sat into that space. And then I was kind of fortunate that, I was had my first opportunity. Everybody needs a break. So I had my first opportunity and was successful at one of those, recruitment interviews. And I was recruited to be an analyst. So for me, that's how my journey started. Once I became an analyst, I thought I was actually going in to be a developer because I'd always appreciated a lot of, the technical side of things. But I was actually so blessed that the person who, had the opportunity to recruit me looked at my personality and said to me, well, I think that your personality is just too great for you to be a technical person. You got to be a functional client facing individual because the skills that you have and your personality basically demands that. So I was literally thrown into the deep end, brought in as an analyst, and then I was just thrown into my first implementation right from day one. I knew absolutely nothing put in front of the application. Well, I did have a little bit of learning before I got to start. I had actually already written, if you like, my first, dynamics exams in Axapta 3.0. That's how far it goes. Tells you a little bit about my age as well. And yeah, and that's how my journey started. So that was an analyst role. And then after a number of years, I progressed into a consultant role. And what I started to do, I started to understand the industry and I started to improve. So I kind of started at that point to build and take my courses in the finance world, to build my knowledge around finance. Basically, how does the finance world works? I understood, my financial accounting, my debits, my credit. I took a number of courses, etc., to deepen that level. So I then, as you go through implementations, you kind of start to build industry experience as well. So I moved from that into a consultant, and then I was lucky after roughly about 3 years, I think, 3 to 4 years each time, I moved into the senior consultant role with another partner. And then after roughly about another 3 or 4 years, gained promotion to become a lead senior consultant. So leading implementations and, very large ones with, another solutions architect always in the lead. So had the opportunity to learn. And then later on found myself in the role. I'll be the man that, I'll be put forward, etc. So that's been my journey. Mine started from uni, and then I had to build the experience and build the business experience as well, to where I am today. Yeah.
Uh,
Fantastic, Kofi, and I really enjoyed the story, and also at the beginning when you said that you were kind of spotted for having those good communication skills, and I really liked that. Thank you, and yeah, and Sarang, and over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I started from a very different background. I started from exports actually. After my MBA, I was into a company where I was more into exports and all. And I think I was lucky enough because at that time an Oracle implementation was going on in that company, and that's how I got to know an ERP and what ERP is all about. And as Kofi just mentioned initially, that you need a break. So the first software company that I joined, I'm really grateful to that company because they gave me the first break as a business analyst. I joined, and that was for a e-commerce company. But the good part about is, I think I was destined to do that. The good part about is I was exposed to all the Microsoft suite of ERPs like GP, Solomon, Exapta, and there was one more. I don't remember the name now. There were four
Navision.
of them. Navision. And the good part about is that company used to provide integrations of from e-commerce platform to all these four ERPs. And that's when I got introduced to AX 3.0 back then, like long back now. And then then I just to prove my point that I be moved from e-commerce into ERP, I did my first certification, though I'll come to certification bit later, but that was my journey. And then they put me into an ERP department, and that's how it started. Then I went to another partner, and as I said, that partner first put me into testing. So I was doing testing for a long part of my initial journey. And then slowly moved from testing into being analyst, then senior functional consultant, and then lead, and then contracting and all that. So it all happened. But I must say one thing, that in all this journey, I think you are just there. And I think if you are willing, and if you are really willing to put in effort, things also start coming your way. And I think that's what happened. I was lucky enough to be mentored by many, many great solution architects along the way, where I have learned a lot from them, learned the tricks of trades, learned how to talk to people, how to present, what knowledge we should have, what books we should read, what courses we should take. And I think people who are just starting, I think that's what I think is the core thing, is to have a right attitude and to have the hunger for knowledge. I think that's what it all boils down to is. And this was my journey basically. So I'm currently into lead functional consultant only. I don't call myself a solution architect yet, because I still feel that there are some more learnings that I need to have before I can make the jump. So yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Two different journeys, and just goes to show that there are so many opportunities within Dynamics where you can kind of work your way up. For someone new to this field, what are the common career paths to becoming a D365 architect? Do most sort of start as consultants, developers, or any other roles at all?
I think I've seen roughly quite a few flavors, but I'll probably highlight maybe about three. So one of the common ones that I have seen in industry is typically from business into consultant. So a lot of the time, what you see is individuals who have got great finance background actually become good application consultants.
Yes.
To start off with, because it's a very easy transition. There are pros and there are cons when you come from that type of background, but the more you are in the industry, you're going to learn, right? So somebody who's come from a finance or business background very quickly kind of learns the finance module and understand the module elements. but they need to do a lot of learning when it comes to the configuration, the technology piece, etc., etc. So I think coming from business is one, common route that a lot of people come into consulting for. I think there is also a place for people who come straight from uni and they want to be career consultants as well. A lot of individuals may have come from business type degrees. So, it might be business analysis type degree or, finance and accounting, etc. And they may just choose that they are not going to pursue a role in finance or a role in accounting. They can bring that knowledge across and then start a career in, a technology consultant, especially business applications, and they can transition from there. And I think the other common one that I've seen is those who kind of start from the technology side of things. So they kind of start initially as developers, developing in other applications, then come into dynamics, either coincidence or whatever, get the opportunity, learn development in dynamics. And as the years goes on, they build a lot of knowledge. And I have seen solutions architects who have crossed, completely, stopped the technical piece, built up their knowledge on the functional and the business piece, and become great solutions architect, functional business solutions architect. These individuals becomes amazing superstars in our world, right? Because what it is that they've got all these years of development, etc., and then build up this experience around business, accounting, etc. So when they are in front of you, they can speak all the language that you need speaking. They can talk to a developer in depth, on surface. They can speak to anybody. And yeah, I think these three are some of the common ways I have seen, people come into this industry from. Yeah.
I absolutely second that, and I was remembering all the individuals when you were mentioning this, Kofi, and as Kofi just mentioned, the first part was about, which I have taken basically, starting directly from being a tester and then senior tester and so on and so forth. That is a traditional way. But the two non-conventional ways which Kofi mentioned was spending around 15 years into accounting and finance, CFO roles and all that roles, and then jumping. I have seen there was one of my colleague who came through that path, and he was excellent in what he was doing. He was learning the product, but the learning was so quick because he knew the base knowledge of what he's trying to achieve. So that was not difficult for him, though there were technical challenges, but I think not every individual is complete. So that he used to manage with a good technical consultant by the side. But that was one. And the second most dangerous combination is people who spend around 15, 16 years of work in the technical domain, learn the tricks of trade around functional as well along the side, and then suddenly become a functional architect. And then they can speak business, they can speak accounting, they can speak code, they can speak testing, they can speak environment, everything. And currently, wherever I am right now, I am in touch with one of these individuals who is kind of like that, and you cannot beat that combination.
No, you can't. We can't mention names here, but we've
yeah,
seen
exactly.
individuals in industry and, they're amazing. One of the things that Sarang mentioned earlier is this, ability of a mentorship, and you can become as good as the people that you've seen in industry. So when you've had the opportunity to work with great architects, you learn from their ways and the way they work with customers and their delivery. You obviously are going to be a product of that. And, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those superheroes that you're talking about, are they what's defined in the recruitment world as a techno-functional architect?
Gurus.
Love that. Yeah, they are techno-functional architects, but I don't even believe that they would even call themselves techno any longer. These guys become true excellent business architects. If a solutions architect or a functional architect would sometimes sit between an enterprise architect and senior leadership teams, and then IT teams, etc. And when you've got an individual like that who is sat in the middle, they can bring your enterprise architecture vision into reality in an excellent way, because they obviously understand all that scope and are able to do all. And I think I also go say that there are levels in this, or if you like, there's a spectrum in this world of solution architecture. Yeah, everybody's going to start from somewhere. and somebody is going to become a solutions architect with 5 years of experience, it doesn't mean they are not. It's just that their knowledge is not the same as a 20 years experience solutions architect. The one with 20 or 30 years is probably thinking about going on retirement, and we're going to need people to essentially build up that knowledge to still continue business. So I think it's a spectrum, and there's a place for people to come into this industry and find themselves right in this spectrum. We want to encourage more individuals to come into it. It just comes in to increase the skills that we have in this area.
I just want to highlight one small point there, though. There is a slight misconception which I have seen across, and that misconception is the more you go higher up, I mean, if you become a solution architect, some of them try to lose their grip on the product, or some of them try
True.
to defend not getting their hands dirty, saying that they are now solution architect. I think this is the biggest pitfall. The true heroes or gurus that I'm talking here, which I cannot name right now, those are the individuals who are nearing their retirement, but they will still make their hands dirty with the newest feature that has come and they will constantly read about the new features, updates, and they are more interested in letting others also know, and also themselves, as to how this feature works. What if this feature is done this way? I think these are the true solution architects. That solution architect which feels that my job is only to collaborate with business people and guide, and I think I mean, they are also solution architects, but they are of a different kind. But the true dark horse is the one who still doesn't shy away from getting his hands dirty.
No, that's great. And I think we need to get these gurus onto the podcast, these secret
Yes.
gurus that you know.
The only thing about these gurus is they are in India. I mean, I'll just quickly say, in India, the mythological gurus, they generally hermit somewhere in the Himalayas, and they will never share their expertise with other people. They will only share with those with after a lot of tapasya. So I think we will have to get in touch with them, convince them, and then I think probably we'll have to bring it onto your
Fantastic.
podcast.
So what certifications or qualifications are critical for someone looking to transition into this role?
I think initially the application certifications is a must. So I believe that there's a path. On the Microsoft world, when you look at the certification path, there's a path to a solutions architect. That path today includes a bit of F&O and also understanding of Power Platform, customer engagement, etc. Because a D365 Functional Solutions Architect now is meant to be somebody with broad understanding of the two application sets. But yes, you're gonna have to start from finance from there, and then essentially build your certifications up. And then I think that, it's definitely a plus if you manage to get certifications on the edges as well, technical certifications as well. Any kind of certification on the technology side around Power Platform, Azure deployment, that gives you data and analytics, that gives you a great understanding of the underlying platform, and then certainly all the other ones that you can do, the industry specific ones. But I think in our world, I think any architect with great certifications in finance, projects, supply chain, maybe a little bit of commerce, is great. If you can have HR as well. I mean, the thing is, you can have certifications to give you understanding of everything, how everything fits. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be an expert in a particular vertical, but you can get the certifications in that and also build the experience in it. So certifications is not all. I think experience, and the diverse experience, is actually probably a little bit more needed in addition to certifications as well. But there is a certification path that you can follow.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Kofi just mentioned, I mean, you shouldn't be judging the book by its cover. And what I mean by that is, I mean, if someone has done 5-6 certifications, and there is another candidate, I mean, this is specifically from a recruitment perspective, and if there is another candidate who has just done one or maybe even not have done any, that doesn't mean that that person doesn't know anything. I mean, certifications is just there, I mean, I personally don't believe in certifications, to be really honest. I mean, that provides you a path for, learning that. But more so, certifications is just an added accreditation. It's not the measure of depth of knowledge that you have. I think the
Right.
experience is something else, certification is something else. But as Kofi just mentioned, there are certain mandatory certifications that people have to do for the sake of company to get, certified in terms of Microsoft and all that. But I think from a recruitment perspective, I think never judge a person by the number of certifications that he has done,
Yeah.
is what I
I,
would say.
I got to also
Yeah.
say, in addition to that, the certifications, especially from Microsoft over the years, is evolving and it's
Yes.
evolved a lot.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I'll probably say a good thing is that some of these certifications now is almost like a very good way of refreshing your knowledge, etc.
Yeah.
As an architect, sometimes you can be so much engrossed and embedded in deploying for a customer that you can lose sight of what's going on elsewhere, and coming into these certifications actually kind of refreshes your memory. I've seen it in implementations before where the approach for a particular solution is changed by Microsoft, but then you got a consultant or an architect who is still trying to shoehorn the old way of doing things
Yes.
into the design. And so there is value in certification, although clearly we're saying that it's not the end or be all for
Correct.
everything. But yeah,
Correct.
there's value there.
That's really good advice, especially from a recruitment perspective. So how important is continuous learning and staying updated within the D365 platform to you?
I will answer this first because I have got this quality from Kofi only. So let me give you a small example. We were working on one of the implementations, I think 8 years ago. And that time we had to do one customization. And I was sitting besides Kofi and he was reading a similar, not customization, but similar feature in some other ERP. And I was mesmerized. I was like, man, I cannot even finish reading what's in the Dynamics world. And he is reading something from a SAP and Oracle world. And I think that was a real eye opener for me. And this was really a good learning as well, because now what I have done is I definitely follow the path for Microsoft regularly. I mean, that also again a quality I've learned from other solution architects only. So I keep a tab on new features coming in and all that, but also sometimes learn the articles or read the articles from the other ERPs that are coming into the market. Like SAP Oracle is already there, but then there is Zero, and then there are other ERPs as well, where you can get the ideas as to, okay, this concept they have implemented it that way. And then there are other industry specific articles as well, case studies. So I think these are some of the things you should keep updating yourself. I mean, business plus the product.
Absolutely. And I think, that's absolutely paramount that, you kind of get to understand what is happening in the market, the competition for the product that you're working in. I think you got to understand trends as well. Everybody's talking about AI, as an architect now, even if you couldn't implement it, you got to understand,
Correct.
the AI proposition for the tool that you've got. So I think, I mean, learning as an architect, this is one of the biggest things that you're going to have to be always on top of the game. And I think
Correct.
even being in a new world where you are in a SaaS provision, everything is in the cloud. There is, innovation and loads of innovation. You're going to have to always keep on top of roadmaps and what's going out there, and understand that you just cannot stop learning in this
Correct.
industry. Yeah, it's almost like being a doctor. You got to
Or
learn and you got to
or
recertify.
or a lawyer, because lawyer also keeps on reading all those case books and always. So I think it's constant learning, and that's how you get confidence in front of the customer as well. I mean.
Mm.
Where do you guys find the time for that? Because you're in your role in these implementations, you're extremely busy and and then you're doing all this learning as well on the side. I mean, do you structure your day? Do you say like I'm gonna do, schedule some, some research in here, or how do you do that?
Kofi, or yeah, I mean, for me, it's, I think every month, as I said, there are structures like clusters, right? I mean, for Microsoft, it's like every month at least I go and see the features page. both for Power Platform and for finance and operations, and just glance through. It's not like I have to literally deep dive into every feature that Microsoft is releasing, but at least have a fair bit of idea. Okay, what is coming in the next release? What is being generally available and all that. And then when it comes to the other general learning about ERP, so I think that's where technology also helps, because Google and Facebook and LinkedIn knows that Sarang reads this article, so they will also feed you with all those
Forced
links.
upon you.
So yeah, in the morning when I look at my phone, I get 2-3 articles about ERPs and all that. So you just click and that's how I think
Yeah.
it is. Kofi.
I mean, for me, sometimes, this world kind of pushes you to go to lengths that, sometimes you may not necessarily want to. But the two drivers for me, some of it is informed by customer requirements.
Yes.
So whilst you're on the program or you're on a particular transformation journey, you've got requirements or customers pushing things at you. You're always going to be on top of the roadmap. Another thing is that you can use that to control expectations about scope and what you intend to do. So customer comes along to you and says, I need this. And then you say, okay, how important is, well, customer says, well, I do need it because it's a little bit of a pain. As a consultant, well, you got this feature coming in the next 4 months, and the customer is going to go through a pain, but nothing is going to break. They're still going to be able to report their business, right? So you can use that as an opportunity to say, look, we have a design principle to say we want to keep things standard, so why can't we just wait to have the standard functionality and put into the design, rather than doing something that is bespoke, and then you're going to have to spend money in the future to maintain these bespoke changes that you've made. So for me, that's definitely one of the drivers. And I generally do tend to, if I've got to do it, stay a little bit late after work hours, spend an hour here or there, or maybe sometimes use, my first, thing in the morning,
Morning.
spend a
Yes.
bit of time and just get to know what's going on in industry. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when moving into the role of a D365 architect?
I think one of the big ones really is setting expectations and being able to control perception and understand and dealing with stakeholders or characters or individuals that you are working with, right? It's an extremely difficult thing to do when you get into a transformation journey. You do have actors within that journey who are definitely for the transformation, but in a changing world or any kind of change management journey, there are going to be those who are not necessarily fully informed, doesn't have a full understanding of why the leadership want to do that, and you are going to face some oppositions whilst you're there. So for me, one of the biggest challenges is dealing with difficult people, not because they are correct, not because they're difficult in their ways. It's just that some of them, or the information and the understanding hasn't trickled down to them yet, and so they don't believe in the cause, right? For certain users, it can always feel like, well, if this tool is just replacing like for what I do, then why do I need this tool? But what they are not considering is the awareness of what happens with their actions. So you get a user who sits in a sales ledger, a project ledger, who processes transactions or processes timesheet. So they do that in a legacy system. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that timesheet. You come along and you want to replace that timesheet again for them. To them is another timesheet system. But if you're unable to create a narrative to say, look, this new system that you've got, if you put in that timesheet, it basically is going to cut your month-end process into half, and you're going to save time and money, because all that you do is automatically getting into your finance ledgers and you don't have to do anything else. You're going to face resistance because that individual just sees it as a like-for-like replacement. So, there's so many that you can always highlight, but dealing with people and difficult people, for me, is one of the challenges that you're going to get as a solutions architect, and getting people to believe in the vision, right? When you present a vision of a design or a solution to a group who do not have an understanding of the platform or the application that is satisfying this vision, you need to do a lot of work to bring them along to that journey, to get them to believe that what you're selling them is right. And that design needs to kind of transcend time, right? You put a design in that is going to come alive in the next 3 years. They need to believe that design now and be ready to defend it. And I think that is one of the most challenging things for a solutions architect to do, to get the design right and be able to sell that vision.
Yeah. And the other part of this, Kofi, if I may add to that, I mean, this is the selling of design and dealing with the difficult people from the other part of the fence, I mean, customer side. But then solution architect also needs to have a cool head to deal with the people within his team as well. Because I mean, I have worked with a couple of solution architects where there is a tussle between a solution architect and a lead consultant because they cannot reach a consensus only. And sometimes what happens is the consultant has more knowledge than a solution architect in that specific area, but just because there is a solution architect at the top, he will not agree to what a functional consultant is saying. So that is another level of conflict which a solution architect needs to learn to handle, because I am seeing it from my side of things, Kofi is mentioning it from his side of things. So this is also another skill, or maybe a way to deal with things. I think difficult people from the team and difficult people from the other side of the team as well, this is the most difficult part, I mean.
So how
Amazing.
do you deal with managing complex requirements from multiple stakeholders within the business?
I think you got to be able to. So we're talking complex, right? So let's just leave the fairly straightforward fit type requirements. We're talking complex, the ones where you have to go through a number of considerations, the one where you're probably going to have a 6 month development cycle, the ones where the cost is going to be hundreds of thousands of pounds to deliver. These are complex requirements, and you're going to, and I think one of the biggest ways of dealing with that from my perspective is to be able to kind of have great stakeholder management. It sounds like, okay, it's a cliche. What do you mean by stakeholder management when you've got complex requirement in front of you? But there are technical ways of satisfying requirements, and there are business ways of satisfying requirements. So when
Yes.
you've got something big and you've got, a customer pushing you in a direction of wanting you to build something that's a monster, you could potentially just have a solution that has got a team of 3 individuals with cheaper cost and a little bit of automation around it. So I think stakeholder management, or being able to create the environment to make the customer understand that you've understood the requirement and be able to kind of give them that confidence that the solution that you're proposing may not be the one that they've envisaged, but is still able to kind of satisfy their requirement. I think that's really key. And if you're able to kind of do that stakeholder management and your customer understands you, I think a lot of the time you can move them from that position to where you're coming from, and you can have a win-win situation where the customer gets what they want, but you're not breaking the bank, you're not breaking the application. I think those are one of the ways of addressing them.
Yeah, and similar to what Kofi just mentioned, I mean, whilst doing this, there has to be a fine balance which a solution architect needs to maintain with dealing with the stakeholders, at the same time dealing with the team inside as well. I mean, based on the capability and based on the time pressure that the team has, there has to be a middle path that needs to be found out based on, if this is a very complex requirement, what are the other areas and other ways we can deal with it? Is there a workaround involved? And all those sorts of things, so that as Kofi just mentioned, it's a win-win both for customer. If solution architect is in between, it should be a win-win for a customer plus for the internal team as well. I mean, there has to be a team angle involved in that as well. So yeah.
Great. So how do you handle scope changes during a project, and how do you ensure that deadlines are met without compromising quality?
Well, I think it's always going to be a difficult one. But I think that being able to create an environment where the customer buys into the journey is really key. So when you've gotten your customer to believe that this journey starts with something but doesn't end there, you are able to essentially take requirements that you believe are going to essentially cause code creep and put it into the next phase of a journey, right? But you got to have this stakeholder approach where you get your customer to believe that just being able to hit the deadline is going to give them the right press, right? It's going to essentially make people have the confidence that this tool, we said we're going to put in on X date, we hit that go live date, we have a solution there, and another one is coming. I think that is definitely one of the ways that you can control scope creep. Work with the customer, get them to accept or buy into the journey, and let us essentially, put things where in the journey where it's acceptable, the customer is happy to manage. Many customers will be happy to, stay for maybe about another 4-6 months and get a release that gives them what they want, rather than, trying to shoehorn everything and compromising your go live date.
Yeah. And to add to that, I mean, to do this and to, assist this process, I think the proper use of technology is also very important. I mean, to make sure that the scope doesn't go outside what has been decided, there has to be a proper use of a tool called DevOps. I mean, we all use that. There are many elements in it as well. I mean, I'll not go into too much detail there, but there are decision points. There are you can maintain a SDD in the that same application as well. So visibility of what we are doing and what is coming next and what has been agreed, a solid boundary. I think once that is communicated time and again, and it has been brought and it has been all documented well, I think that can save us a lot of pain later, because after certain time, blame game can also start. I mean, that is the darker side of the implementation.
Yeah, and a lot of the time where facing is may not necessarily be the thing. You can explore other interim solutions as well.
Yes.
That interim solution can be, doing in this new world, in D365 world, where you've got Power Platform, you can build something in Power Platform very quickly, stand it up very quickly, still be able to kind of use that as an approach. You can look at ways of using manual automation, i.e., can you put something in a spreadsheet, use Power Automate, etc., to push data elsewhere without necessarily compromising what is going on in the core application and the core delivery. So those are some of the ways that you can definitely use to control scope. And a lot of these other, if you like, ways on the edges, be it manual or simple automation, sometimes you can essentially push that aside from the main delivery team, not to distract the core team, and you can essentially give that to someone in the customer estate to essentially be the owner of that. It doesn't distract anything. It just helps you to drive the solution and achieve the go live date.
Yeah.
Great. So can you share an experience where things didn't go as planned during a D365 implementation and what you learned from it?
Plenty, loads. Yeah, it's a good one. So I've seen a go live date that you obviously you plan to say I'm gonna go into live and this is my rollback plan. But a lot of the time you're not actually wanting to use that rollback plan, if you like, because you want to do your go live and go straight. I have seen implementations where we've had to attempt to go live 3 times. So we kind of started going live, if you like within the 6 months period, and it took roughly about 3 attempts to eventually go live. So I've seen them go wrong in the past. But one of the things that I have learned with seeing another go live, which was kind of maybe could have been paused, but then we kind of continued, and then there had to be a lot of work, like something like 18 months of specialist support to support that solution. One of the things that I have learned is sometimes there might be a cost, and a very expensive cost, but if you're not ready, there is no point to actually jump and go into it. My very recent implementation that I was the original go live date had to move roughly twice. But then when we eventually came to delivering that go live, it was the smoothest thing ever, right? And the reason for that is that we had the application or maybe had the attempts before, and we wanted to feel very confident in the deployment process. Rehearsed it a number of times. Yes, we still had some issues around data, etc. But the process of actually building out the environment, transitioning it, and doing the migration, it was excellent, and there was no need for sort of executing that rollback plan. So my first learning is, if you're not ready, don't do it. Takes a little bit of time, take a step back, and then do it properly. That's my learnings from what I've been through.
My learning is not to fall in love with your own creation, and
Love it.
I will be honest with you, because when you fall in love with your own creation and you just go blind about what the customer really wants, that is the perfect recipe for failure, because you just develop for the sort of developing it without taking into consideration what the end customer wants, and once it goes live, your probably three-fourth or maybe 90% of the solution is thrown out of the window because it is not usable, it is not ergonomical. And I think this is the perfect learning that I have had, and these are some of the challenges I have faced, where we are so focused with all those things around our eyes that we don't see the bigger picture, and then we meet the failure. That was one. And second is, if, as Kofi just mentioned, I have also experienced a similar feature where the go live date was decided on the first day of the implementation, and that was followed no matter what, just not taking cognizance of whether we are ready or not. And then the support was even more longer than the implementation, entire implementation period. So if the implementation was for 1.5 years, the support continued for later 2 years. So I think these are some of the pitfalls we should, I think, avoid. I mean, yeah.
Brilliant, Sarang. Thank you. So we mentioned earlier about AI. How is the role of a D365 architect evolving with new technologies like AI, learning, and low-code platforms?
A lot. I think that the ways of doing things is gradually shifting, and I think that in the future, most solutions architect, consultants, lead architect, the world of D365 is shifting into that world. I think that the innovation is new. There are a number of considerations that I think customers are still yet to get grips of. One of the big considerations around AI is around licensing, right? So there's all these wonderful capability out there, but then when our customers essentially come into it, they notice the amount of money they're going to have to put in to get this capability. So it's a consideration, but I think that from a technology standpoint, AI is definitely the direction that we're moving into. Is so powerful what these AI tools can do for you. I think another area that I can clearly see a great direction as well is work in the area of custom AI, integrations or custom AI initiatives. So, I can see a time where each implementation, the customer is going to request some form of a custom AI, which wouldn't necessarily be one of the out-of-the-box standard or an offering that's coming directly from the Microsoft platform. It'd be something very unique that can cut across the customer's business. I think that we should expect to see lots of these coming out. I think you would have heard, there's been news out there of, a number of very large corporations, professional services organizations spending money to invest into AI tools, and some of the numbers are huge. So I think that's going to be the direction that we're going to be seeing around AI.
Yes, I mean, adding to what Kofi just mentioned, I mean, the direction of Microsoft is towards merging those two platforms together. The finance platform, which was traditional FinOps, and then merging it with the Power Platform going ahead. So, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kofi, but more and more AI is more focused on the front end, which is around the data side of things. The AI capabilities are also garnering interest, or proving more, making headway into the finance space as well. But I think the more focus right now is on the data verse side of things, and then slowly finance and operations is also picking up. I mean, right now, mostly the AI that I have seen so far is, I mean, the auto suggestions that the system gives, and the auto filling of some manual tasks that a person is expected to do. We have come to this point of we have come to this level as of now. But as Kofi just mentioned, the future is like unbelievable going ahead when it comes to AI plus Power Platform and D365 FinOps going ahead.
Fantastic. So, what advice would you give to somebody just starting out on their journey towards becoming a D365 Functional Solutions Architect?
Kofi.
No, I think my advice is very, very simple. Learn, 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 right? These three things. Number one, learn. Number two, learn.
Learn, and
Number
number two,
three,
learn.
do some more learning. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, there is not enough that you can learn in this world. You got to be able to learn. And then I also do want to say that you've got to have a passion for this product. I mean, I've been on implementation with my friend here, Sarang, and anybody who knows me, like, I have a passion for the product. People
Yes.
we go on implementations, and there are requirements that we may not be able to deliver. And then some, you do get the odd occasion where someone comes to you and says, yeah, your product is not doing it. Well, true. The product is not my product. It's your product, because you're the one who bought it. I'm only there to support you to implement it. But obviously, we do have such a passion for what we do. And so I think that anybody coming into this industry, you got to have a passion for it. If you don't have a passion, you're going to get frustrated very, very,
very soon. Yeah. I mean, to add to what Kofi just mentioned, those three learns, I mean, you can name them, but one of that learn is definitely financial knowledge, because no matter how technologically advanced the product is, the base still remains the base. I mean, debits and credits are never going to go away 20 years from now, even if there is a lot of AI. The person implementing has to understand what a debit and what a credit means, and then he can delve into other areas. But I think the base has to be strong, and for that, you will have to take efforts, learn. So I think, yeah, one learn should be financial knowledge, though. Yeah.
Definitely. So, where can listeners learn more about D365 certifications or join the community?
Oh,
I think there are plenty. I'll mention if you allow Sarang to win, but some of my I three main things that I do. So obviously do like the Microsoft Docs, which essentially articles that explain the capability of the system. I do love the good quality podcast or good quality videos, and I love watching like the Microsoft videos, the ones that are lengthy, like the 1 hour demos, etc. They are brilliant. And another thing that I particularly do is I do love to watch third-party solutions being demoed as well. It's a great source of learning, right? You may have all the capability that is in the standard solution around subscriptions. All you got to do is watch another video from a third party, and what you're going to see is other requirements within the subscription world, which is being built in a vertical, industry, satisfying something that you thought, oh, this application could do it, but clearly it couldn't. So those for me are my three, if you like, learning areas: the docs, the videos, and obviously looking at third parties as well.
My 2 pence, so it will make 5 pence together. So my 2 pence is, one is learning is very important, but at the same time, retention is also very important. I mean, no matter how much you learn, but I personally thought that my brain has a very limited capability. So the more I learn, I think if after 10 days, probably I might forget as well. So my thing is, I have created my own personal blogs out there. And what I do is, whatever I learn, I somehow make time in the day or in the week to put that on that blog, and it's for everyone else as well because it is public, but it is specifically for me because I know that I forget very easily. So that's like my alternate brain, my alternate storehouse, where sometimes if there is a certain concept in one of the implementation which I'm going to face again, I can just go to my blog and read that blog, and okay, and I can refresh, okay, this is what I did that day. And this is what I do. One is learn, and then retention is very important. And second is reading good books as well, not only on finance but also on ERP, and then also on technology, so that you are well aware of what is happening. And I think this shows when you speak with the customer. I think these all things combined will come out of your mouth when you're in front of the customer. So yeah.
Hey, thank you guys. That's been an amazing podcast. You're both clearly very experienced, very passionate about what you do, and I really hope that we get lots of listeners for people to learn about the journey to a D365 architect or lead consultant. So I hope that the listeners take, so much away from it, as have I. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to catch our next episode as we continue exploring the world of Dynamics 365, and please subscribe. So thank you very much, guys, and speak to you again soon.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.